Alright, so here's a new Lumanda recipe that I've been working on with some homemade pasta. So when it comes to Zambian cooking, there's that phrase, let the ancestors guide you. But sometimes the ancestors are busy and I end up messing up recipes. So as a backup, I've been working on precise measurements of the Lumanda pasta ingredients so I can get perfect results all the time. So I measure up 250 grams of Lumanda and 125 of sieved pounded groundnuts. I cut 2 medium-sized tomatoes into quarters, then cut those quarters in half. I do the same for 2 medium-sized onions. For the liquid, I pour 1 liter of water into a pot, then toss in 2 stock cubes. I stir it around until the stock cubes dissolve in the water. I usually use chicken stock cubes for this recipe, but I decided to use oxtail and switch it up. I grab a blender and toss in the Lumanda. It's a bit much, so I make sure to just shove it in there. I add the pounded groundnuts, half the tomatoes, half the onions, 2 whole garlic cloves. I pour in half the liquid, close it up, and begin the blending process. It's a bit slow to get going, so I help it along with the cook instead. I then pour in the remaining liquid as I realize I should have just poured it all in at the beginning. I blend it for about 5 minutes to get this really smooth consistency. I pour the liquid into a pot, add a teaspoon of soda, and begin to cook it on medium-high heat. I don't add any salt at this point because stock cubes can be a bit salty and the salt concentration becomes high as the liquid goes down. I stir it around and test it occasionally just to see if I need to adjust on anything. It's really important to use a large pot because limachosa pov. 15 minutes in, it has cooked down quite a bit. I give it a taste and decide it needs 1 teaspoon of salt. Now I just love biting into chunks of barely cooked tomatoes and onions in my Lumanda. So 35 minutes into the cooking process, I toss in the remaining tomatoes and onions. I add in half a teaspoon of salt and half a teaspoon of soda as well. I then cook it for a further 5 minutes. So after a total of 40 minutes, the Lumanda is ready. For the pasta, I dump 240 grams or 2 cups of flour onto my work surface. I make a well in the middle and crack in 3 eggs. Now I'm supposed to sprinkle in a little salt, whisk the eggs, then slowly incorporate the flour into the eggs. But as you can see, none of that is happening. My well is neither wide nor deep enough. And the more I try to fix it, the worse it's becoming. It's a disaster. But not completely, because somehow the dough has come together and I've managed to sprinkle in a teaspoon of salt in between all that chaos. I wipe my surface clean, dust it with some flour, then knead the dough for about 10 minutes. The dough should come out nice and smooth. I cover it up and put it away to rest. After 30 minutes, the dough is well rested and ready to roll. I then divide it into 4 pieces. Each piece will produce a single serving. I dust the work surface with some flour, flatten the dough out with my hand, and begin to roll it. It's important to continuously dust the surface and the rolling pin to avoid sticking. Once the dough has been rolled to my desired thickness, I decide to divide it into 2 parts because it's too long. I dust with more flour, fold the dough, then I use a knife to cut it into fettuccine-shaped pasta, which is probably the easiest shape to make without using a pasta machine. I roll out the pasta, then fluff it in a dusting of flour so it doesn't stick together. And that's homemade disaster pasta. To cook the pasta, I heavily salt a pot of boiling water and toss it in. Fresh pasta only takes about 3 minutes to get ready. I drain out the water and add the pasta to a mixing bowl. I add a ladle full of Lumanda and toss the pasta in the sauce. You can add more or less depending on how saucy you want it, but I feel 1 ladle is perfect for me. I serve up the pasta in this beautiful bowl, then garnish with some basil. Alright, this is the best version of this recipe that I've made so far. The sauce is smoother and the depth of flavors is just next level. The fresh pasta has a perfect snap to it, an absolute game changer.